Here's Richard.
And filling in for Richard is Hal Shurtleff, Camp Constitution Director. And our camp is coming right up in just a few days at the beautiful Toanippie Christian Retreat Center in Ringe, New Hampshire, July 2nd to the 9th. And there's still some space available. So if you visit our website, campconstitution.net, you'll be able to find information about our camp. And we have a great lineup of instructors, including someone who's on the line here, and if I'll introduce them in a minute or so. One of the things I want to mention, on our website, we have something called the Blumenfeld Archive. Sam Blumenfeld was a pioneer in the modern homeschool movement, authored a number of books, and I inherited his library. And doing that was important to put a lot of his writings, archive these writings, his speeches he gave at events all over the country, actually in other parts of the world. And we are getting about 240,000 views per month. And it's every month it's just going up and up. And in 5 months, we've got something like 30,000 downloads of his books and his. And the most important work of all the great work was his simple Alpha Phonics workbook, how to teach people how to using the simple phonics method. And you have all 128 lessons in audio and video, plus the book you can download for free. So visit our website and see that archive. On the line, I hope, is Pastor Earl Wallace.
Hi, Hal. How are you doing?
Good. I was a little nervous there. I'm glad you're there. Well, Earl is one of our instructors at Camp Constitution, and he's the author of the
Three-dimensional leader.
Thank you. The three-dimensional leader. I had a little mental block there. Yes. But that's so you can talk a little bit about the book. It's a great book about leadership, and you also it was interesting. I was asked to come to 3 events in one day, and I couldn't do it. I can only do 2 things at once. And it was an event in New London, Connecticut. This would have been a few weeks ago. It was a rally, and it was a very pro-Trump rally. And the host asked me if I could make it, and I said no, but I have someone that could probably come down there. And Earl lives in Schenectady, New York, so it's a little bit of a ride. But you went down there, and the fact that you are a person of color. Well, wait a minute now. I thought Donald Trump was a racist. How is that? How is that? How is that so? So well, tell it was.
Well, but black people want jobs.
Well, it's interesting.
Any jobs for Obama?
Earl, I was at we had a outreach event in Boston Common. My son and I, we just had a little table. We had a little 10-question quiz asking people, get a free copy of the Constitution, fill out the quiz. And there was this black gentleman who came by. He's probably in his 40s. And, oh, my goodness, Trump is racist. Now, and I said, well, okay, that's a serious charge to make. And you have any evidence and proof of that? Now, here's a guy from New York City. I said, did he have Klan rallies at his Trump Towers? Does he have ties to the Ku Klux Klan or the neo-Nazis? And, of course, he could answer that. But it was just this mantra, he must be racist because I hear he's racist. So how do you address that, Earl?
Well, I do what you just do. I ask people questions. I ask, tell me one racist statement that has come out of his mouth. And if they can't do that, then they say he's a misogynist. He hates women. And I said, are there black women during his campaign who work for him who were saying that he treats them well and he promotes them. They make what other people earn. And, I think that, I'm going to, this summer at Camp Constitution, I'm going to be teaching rules for radicals. And one of the rules for radicals is that you isolate your opposition or the people that you don't like, and you ridicule them. You subject them to extreme personal attacks and ridicule, and that's what they're doing with Donald Trump. That's what they're doing on these college campuses. That if they don't like what a speaker says, they just shout them down. They call them names. They make all sorts of accusations against you. It's very hard to disprove a negative.
That's right.
If someone says I did something that I didn't do, and they have a lot of, it's mob rule, and they have a lot of people that will shout a slogan that says I did it. I can't get a word in edgewise. How do I disprove it? Well, they may win the battlefield that day because I have to walk away because I can't get a word in edgewise. and it doesn't matter to them, well, they'll stand before God for lying. It's a violation of the divine Decalogue for dynamic decency, the Ten Commandments, which is another book we're working on, which I hope are in the hands right now of the final 2 proofreaders, and we're hoping to release that book at the end of July.
Well, it's interesting. You made reference to Saul Alinski's book, Rules for Radicals, and I recommend that book to every conservative-minded person, because we have to know how the enemy operates. And it was interesting that he dedicated that book to an interesting entity. He dedicated the book to Lucifer. And he claimed to be an atheist. He was from a Jewish background, but he claimed to be an atheist.
Kind of like a ghostwriter.
A ghostwriter, yes. But he said that Lucifer was the first radical, the first rebel. And, of course, anyone who's read this book, Rules for Radicals, he talks about the haves, the have-a-littles but want mores, and the have-nots, and this constant struggle. But what happens when you're a have-not and become a have? Then are you the bad guy all of a sudden? I mean, it defies logic. But I tell you, he got a lot of influence. He influenced a lot of people. I mean, you could say that the people, Hillary Clinton, for example. So you could look at the evidence. You know, some people will say that John.
Well, she tried to work for Saul Alinsky. She actually
she
wrote
knew
letters
him personally.
to the guy.
Yeah. Where at least Obama didn't know him personally. He had passed away in the early 70s. Yep. But there was a John Eidsmoe, who's a constitutional scholar, said that he calls John Calvin one of the founding fathers. Well, of course, he wasn't at the Independence Hall. Right. Just his influence. Yep. You could see that that one of the founding fathers of radicalism and socialism today would be Saul Alinsky, because he's so highly regarded. And it was interesting too. I met a gentleman back in he's from Texas, Michael Rodriguez. And Michael was very much against the fighting the illegal immigration way back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, before it became the big problem it is today. And he said that he talked about Cesar Chavez. He said he got his study start at the Industrials organization through Saul Alinsky.
Sure.
And that liberation theology, which you think came from some crazy priest in South America, he said came out of Chicago, came out of Saul Alinsky's lab, so to speak. So he's quite an influential individual.
Well, I forget what it's called, but the other person on the call here, he said something about writing. And what do you call it when it's like mnemonic writing, when like Satan is writing through you?
Oh, this is
Ed Nail.
Ed Nail, yeah.
From the Coalition of Hampshire Taxpayers.
Hey, Ed, how are you doing? Good to meet you.
Good. I'm glad you're on.
Yes, I've heard that. What was the term again? Automatic writing?
Well, ghost
writing.
Yeah.
Ghost writing in the literal sense.
Right. Yeah, it's
but
the other one is. Go ahead.
Well, his rule number 4 is you weaponize rules. That's my word. My word is weaponize rules. It says make the enemy live up to its own rule book. So they make ridiculous claims on what they call the Christian ethic. You heard Obama say this all the time. Well, this is not our values. We have to do these things, and Merkel's saying this in Europe all the time. Well, these are our Christian values. Well, I don't believe that Angela Merkel or Barack Obama are Christians who read the Bible, because the Bible says many things about how to treat the immigrants come into your country. They're supposed to be treated like you are treated. You don't give them special privileges and whatnot. And so what they do is they make these ridiculous claims about Christianity, and in Alinsky's own words, maybe it's Cloward and Piven's words, you overinflate the social contract. You expand welfare by saying it's our Christian duty to do so. And you look at rule number 5, which is ridicule. Alinsky says ridicule is man's most potent weapon. To ridicule is to subject others to contemptuous and dismissive language or behavior. So what does the left do? They scorn alternative viewpoints. They make derisive comments and they call us names rather than discuss the facts of an issue. They mock, and mocking means that they make these absurd misrepresentations of our viewpoints. That's like you heard the leftist congressman saying, we're going to throw grandma from the train if we cancel Obamacare. Grandma's going to get thrown out of the nursing home. So they make these absurd misrepresentations. And, Hal mentioned a real important thing. What happens when you become a have? Well, all communists come to power on the promise of, I'm going to take care of the poor. All dictators. Mao Zedong did it.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler did it. Name a bad guy. Lenin and Stalin.
The Castro brothers are billionaires. They're one's dead, but they're
Bernie
billionaires.
Sanders.
There's another rich guy.
Yeah, and what they do is people say, well, yes, I want to take care of the poor, so they support that. And these guys then use that power to beat up on all the businesses, which is the only way to really get out of poverty is to get a job. And if you're manufacturing something that provides good things in the world that people are willing to pay you a profitable price to enjoy, which is capitalism, the more people that want to buy and enjoy it, the more money that comes into your organization, the more people you have to hire to produce it, to help finding. You need accountants, you need lawyers, you need manufacturing people, you need laborers. So all these people begin to make money and come into the organization, providing something useful for the world. Communism does not provide anything useful in the world. It just takes and sucks and takes, and then once it has power, it beats up on everybody, puts a bunch of people in a gulag who disagree with them. But in the meantime, if you have a secret handshake with a communist government, if you're one of the dictator's friends, you become a billionaire. Everybody else becomes poor.
It's really
greatest scheme in the planet.
It's interesting, too. The word capitalism is something that's, I think, misunderstood because sometimes it has a negative connotation. When people think of capitalism, they think of greed or they think of monopoly capitalism. Yeah. We have to clarify that I like the term free market or free market capitalism. And also, you have to have a Christian or Judeo-Christian conscience along with that. In other words, we have an obligation to the poor, but it's not at the point of a gun, and it's not through the welfare system.
We should really have an obligation to keep the government from taking care of the poor.
That's exactly
that should be
right.
our obligation.
That's exactly right.
I teach.
Go ahead, Earl.
I teach the Bible, so I always teach that if you look at the parable of the talents, Jesus gives 3 people talents, and they're supposed to increase their talents. They're supposed to look. This is the Protestant work ethic. This is what the Puritans brought into America. You look to God and say, Lord, this is how you have wired me. These are the gifts and abilities you've given me. Hey, I may want to enter into an apprenticeship program and find someone who's better at it, and I can learn how to do what you've wired me to do a little bit better. I might want to go get some education to improve on the way God has wired me and what he wants me to produce in the world. But I'm looking to the Lord to lead me and guide me so I can take what he's given me, time, talent, and treasure, and do some useful, God-honoring things in this world. Bring some good things to life, products, goods, and services that other people are willing to pay us a profitable price to enjoy. There's a tremendous win. There's 3 wins there, as I just explained. The owner wins, the inventor wins, the public who wants to buy it, the consumer wins, and the people that are going to come into the company as it grows continue to win. There's 4 or 5 wins there.
Hey, Earl, we have 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes to this segment, so I want to talk a little bit about your book, The Three-Dimensional Leader, which is a phenomenal book.
Well, I started in the late 1980s, early 90s, noticing that churches were closing all over America, and of course that accelerated in 2000. It's really not a religious book; it's really a secular book. But I kept asking God, "What happened to your churches? Why are all our churches closing?" And He kept saying leadership. So one day I was supervising offices up and down the eastern corridor of New York State for the New York State Division of Veterans Affairs. And one week I was in a community. I think it might have been Saranac Lake, and I had to go back the next week. And in between that week, a Baptist church had closed up. It had probably been closed for a while, or was looking for another person to occupy the building. And some kind of Hindu temple sign was now over the doorway. And I thought, oh my gosh! So I said, Lord, what's happening? He said, go home and read the Book of Judges tonight, and I'll show you. Because I said, you keep saying leadership. What do you mean? Anyway, there's 3 dimensions of leadership. And I looked at the Book of Judges, and what is successful leadership in the Book of Judges? Well, that's a person who focuses on mission matters most. and they also rally the people, the chief resources, to God's cause. So the book is called The Three-Dimensional Leader, Negotiating Your Mission, Resources, and Context. And the context is you got to get a 10,000-foot objective view of the environment in which your mission is unfolding, so you understand that there's new technology, anything that's kind of come into the mix that's going to impact the way your people work, and you have to understand that context.
Earl, where can people get a copy of the book?
You can either get it through my website or you can get it off of Amazon.com. My publisher